Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BetTALker podcast. Today we have with us Dr. Minal Jain, uh, who is a co-founder of RecoverMe and also an NHS doctor. RecoverMe is an app that helps people affected by gambling harm to to get better, but we'll heard everything about it directly from Mina. Mina, would you mind to tell us a little bit how how this magic happened? When did you decide to create this app, and a little bit about your own personal story?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Pedro, for the introduction, and it's lovely to be here. Yes, as you mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of RecoverMe. I can't take full credit. The founding team includes Adil and Tejas, and we're actually friends from university, and that's actually where the journey began. So if I were to take it back to 2018, actually, we've been doing this a little while, and it came off the back of some of the clinical experiences that we were having as medical students.
Mhm.
So, as you know, as part of our degree, what we have to do is essentially do medical placements in various different settings. And one particular experience really stood out to us when we were in primary care, working as GPs, and we were seeing, or we saw particularly one individual who was seeing their GP for mental health problems.
Mhm.
So things like depression, things like anxiety. But the advantage that we have, obviously, as medical students, is that we have a lot more time, and we were able to build a bit of a rapport and understand why this gentleman was actually seeking help. And it actually was one of the first times I came across a gambling addiction. And then it actually seemed that everything that this individual was experiencing kind of stemmed from that. So we put our heads together. We were like, what can we do as medical students, soon to be doctors? How do we support these individuals? And at the time, the landscape was really different, as you probably know, Pedro. Digital wasn't something that was done and something that was that common. And so we felt like this would be a really good avenue to pursue. So it started off like a passion project, and over the years it's kind of evolved to RecoverMe as you know it.
Okay, and because it's this thing, as a student, you have a bit more time, to ask questions and of that. And say, okay, someone that comes with depression, but the depression was a bit intertwined with gambling, and I suppose sometimes a bit like the chicken and and the egg, or or what are your views? Is there some causality or a bit more of a correlation? How do you see it?
It's a really interesting question, and I think it's something that we're still understanding as the medical profession. I think the issue is that gambling does come with a number of other comorbidities. So you've got the likes of depression, anxiety, and then kind of if we look at the spectrum of other mental health conditions, things like bipolar, there is sometimes a link there too. And so the way I see it essentially is that the link is so complex as medical professionals. What we should really be trying to do is screening some of these individuals, like we screen for other parts of a social history. So, alcohol, smoking, you might see your GP ask you questions like that. But I think as part of that, really engaging in the holistic picture as well. So, do you have financial problems? And if the answer to that is yes, maybe a little bit more probing. And I am seeing a lot of general practitioners really kind of more aware of this. The RCGP have kind of study days, they have a lot of guidance now as well through NICE, which really looks to educate us as medical professionals, so we're able to do our bit and support and actually identify, I guess.
Wonderful. I wanted to ask you, how does, for those that they don't know how the Recover Me app works, how does it work? What are the features? Could you tell us a little bit about So imagine that I have a gambling problem. I'm looking in the app store. I find it. What would I find? How would it help me?
Well, you've got me. You'll have me talking for a really long time, Pedro. So
That's okay.
please feel free to stop me along the way because I do get carried away. But Recover Me, from our perspective, is like a toolbox, right?
Mhm.
The way we see it is that in every other aspect of life, you have a choice. You have a choice to engage with treatment that would suit you. So for some people, that is going to see someone face to face. For some people, that is doing a little bit of reading on their own, some self help exercises. And then for others, it might be engaging with a digital tool. So, Recover Me was born from an evidence based practice. As you're aware, CBT is the actual gold standard for treatment of gambling addiction. And so we felt that it was really important to incorporate that as part of our main offering. We spoke to the likes of Dr. Minal Jones, who's really well renowned in the field. And we used her insights as well to develop what we deem to be kind of a flexible, structured approach to kind of accessing therapy. So you've got bite-sized chunks that you can go through where you engage with audio recordings, interactive exercises as a way to really understand, but also the premise of CBT is to obviously change that relationship between your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And what we want to do is look at the more problematic ways of thinking, behaving, and feeling, and try and replace that with healthier mechanisms as well. So a large chunk of what we do is the CBT. But like with anything, I think it's really helpful to have a few other really like positive ways to enhance behavior. So we have a self-monitoring diary. It's a really good way to kind of track your behaviors. So if you've gambled, if you've not gambled, you'll be taken to a variety of different questions to really get you thinking and reflect on what you feel might have happened and ways that you might want to kind of change going forward. So those are two aspects. And then the evidence really does suggest that mindfulness with CBT is super effective. I mean, I'm a big fan of Headspace.
Mhm.
um, so I know that that sort of emotional regulation for me personally is really helpful. And what we've tried to do is speak to others and really incorporate that within the app too. So our mindfulness mirrors our CBT to some degree. So you've got the gambling kind of focus, so aspects of urge management. You've got kind of focuses on sleep as well. So it's a bit of a wide variety, but the idea is that we really want to encourage you to feel your emotions and deal with them in a way that's kind of better for you. So that's kind of elements of it. And then we've got the support tab that patches you into other organizations
Okay.
just
Yeah.
because we can't do everything, you know.
Yeah.
We've got BetTALker on there because we know that
Yeah.
blocking software is so important, and that's not something that we do. So really patching you in, signposting you to the right sorts of organizations. And then as an added layer, we have our SOS tab. So as you know, in the UK, you've got your gambling helpline. Even in the US, you've got helplines that are available. So if you do really want to speak to someone, we encourage that through the SOS tab, or the emergency help that we have. So yeah, that's a bit of in a nutshell.
It's really a good thing that you provide with different options, like mindfulness, ECBT, a bit like helplines and all this sort of stuff. Do you have any sort of motivational interview features to deal with the ambivalence of you know
It's an interesting aspect, and obviously from a psychological point of view, it's super effective, right? I don't think we have we've incorporated that to the same degree. We do emphasize increasing intrinsic motivation. So we've got that element of goal setting. And actually, in the last update, we really did have a big focus on that. So what you'll see in the coming months, actually, with our new release, is the idea that our goal setting is going to be a little bit more, I guess, all encompassing. So at the
Mhm.
moment, we're looking at drivers like time saved, money saved, but we know goals are way more important than that. For some individuals, it's spending more time with their family, or it's,
Yeah.
playing a bit more sport, or something like that. So in that way, we're trying to increase that intrinsic motivation to help individuals overcome their gambling addiction. But the elements of motivational interviewing, we've kind of left to the experts.
Okay. I, I'm curious because I remember, like, I think it was like around 2015 or something. At Gordon Moody at Gambling Therapy, we created an app,
Oh,
and I mean, it was like extremely basic. I think we got some funding. I think it was back then, I think from Playtech, and developing an app was really expensive back then. And it's like, or you develop an app, and it's a bit like, okay, it's not all singing and dancing because you don't have money. So, okay, what can you do? Yeah, we have this, but it's going to cost you 100K. Okay, what can you do? For 15K or 12 or whatever. So, okay, not much. And I think it was a bit like something. We just drop it there, got some, back then got a bit of you know some visibility, but it fizzled out quickly, because again, it's very, like, people, they have really high standards on apps, and they hope, or people expectancies is like, okay, every couple of weeks you get an update, new features, all singing and dancing, with a lot of gamification. How do you keep up, because it's must be like burning money on developers all the time. No, must be quite difficult. Keep at the top. How do you do it?
no, and you know what? That's such a fair question. It's a question we ask ourselves every single day. How are we going to keep doing this? But no, but you're so right, right? Like, I think the advantage that we have was that we were one of the first in the field, so we were
Okay.
able to really amass quite a strong community, I think, and that's been a really good foundation for us, because we've relied on them to kind of steer the ship a little bit. So a lot of what we do is guided by lived experience, and throughout our iterations over the last couple of years, we've really tried to engage with that community to see what they want. Because I think if you're delivering what your users want, the idea is that the buy-in's a bit stronger, and I think ultimately they're seeing that response, and they want to continue with the utilization of the app. So that's a big thing. And I think ultimately the other thing that's always driven us is the idea that this always started as a passion project.
Mhm.
And ultimately, what we want to do is utilize everything that we're able to garner from working with some great organizations that support us to keep the app for free, but utilize all that funding, or as much as we're able to either maintenance of the app, or incorporating these new features. So actually, this last year has been super exciting for us. We are embedding, I think, a 3 to 4 new kind of facets of the app. So
Mhm.
new things that hopefully will be the singing and dancing parts of the app, that will keep people engaged. So things like a mini game. We've got the ability to have quite a dynamic experience. So as a user, when you come onto the platform, you go through kind of some onboarding questions where we really understand what you want from the app, and then we pitch various different aspects that we think would be super helpful for your recovery. And then we're looking at incorporating something called a dynamic island. So when you come onto the app, it's not going to be static. You're going to be
Mm.
fed a few different things where you can engage and try something new, and kind of keep very active on our platform. So
So,
hard.
sounds a bit like gamification, but for a positive thing.
Yeah.
For Okay. And I wanted to ask you, because I think a few weeks ago I saw, like, like a post, was saying like 8 million hours uh,
Oh my
of gambling
gosh.
free or something. Could you tell me about that? Because I was like, oh wow, that's a really big impact. That.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that we've truly tried to drive with the app, because ultimately that's a success story from our point of view as well. So that's why the self-monitoring diary is so important, because we ask users to engage with that as frequently as they're able to, and we're able to collate that data to identify kind of how many days gamble free are together, and then kind of put that all in a number, and that's kind of across the board. So all of our users across the world that access RecoverMe. So it was a massive milestone, but I think, like I said, it's about broadening what our impact is. That is, it's great, and it's our starting point, but we also want to be looking at what that then means for an individual, right? Like a gamble free day is excellent, but is that translating to what they want? So like I mentioned with the goal setting, I think if that individual is then able to do the things that they maybe weren't able to do because of their gambling addiction, then that's more of a success story in some respects, you know?
Okay, I know what you mean. It's like, okay, or I think I do. Like, for example, you don't want somebody to say, okay, I'm not gambling, but I'm shopping compulsively, or I'm doom scrolling, or I'm watching porn, or I'm just playing Call of Duty. It's a bit like, okay, you need to make a bit of a long-lasting impact on people's life, not just put a plaster, say, okay, here you go, and because you got a lot of, particularly with gambling disorder, you or people affected by problematic gambling, you find a lot that there's a lot of underlying issues. Sometimes they move from gambling to something else, or before gambling they were having other addictive problems, maybe substances, alcohol, unhealthy types of behaviors. I was thinking, you must have a lot of data. Do you engage with research, or do you engage with any university to say, okay, like, how do you translate that wealth of data, of hours of this into, do you have any partnerships, or you looking into?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting avenue, and something that we're always willing to explore. Up until now, I think our aim was to try and utilize the data for the benefit of our users, right? It just, I think what I've found in the past, especially in this field, and especially in this space, actually, people are a little bit more reluctant sometimes for data to be shared, just because of the repercussions of things. So we've been really careful up until now. We want our users to feel protected on the app, to feel like what they're doing on the app is ultimately just reused to the betterment of the app, essentially. But I think we're getting to the stage where we do have a lot of data, and data that would be helpful to guide not just our journey, but kind of the landscape. So yeah, we don't have any official partnerships when it comes to research, sorry, but I think it's definitely something that we'll be looking to do in the coming months and
I
years.
mean, we, at the Blocker, we just started, with research. We just got the benchmark of 100,000 active users. Like, in the last, I think, like 6 months since the beginning
Congratulations.
of the year, and it's like, oh wow, this
Yeah.
is big. And our main thing is because you know stigma is a big thing, as you were saying. We're anonymous. Okay, it's safe for people, could just click and download. One of the things, okay, we have a lot of anonymized data.
Mm.
We have a lot of users worldwide, and it's okay, keeping this sort of anonymity. Can we help, because I think, you get organization that they say, okay, let's just get a research consultancy. We pay them, we get a report, a nice PDF, 100 pages that maybe no one is going to read, all singing and dancing. But it's a bit like, but that's not the gold standard. Probably it needs to be like peer review. They need to. So
Yeah.
we didn't want to go the avenue of you know getting a research consultancy. We said, okay, even if it's a bit slower and maybe a bit more painful, let's work with proper research, organization, like universities. So what I'm going to do, if you want, at some point, I'll hook you up with them because they're quite nice, and maybe it's something good. I don't know if you mind me to ask you, but how do people normally find the Recover Me app? Do they just go to the app store, or you get referrals through, I don't know, NHS, or mm, Gamble Aware or Care, or through gambling operators? How do people normally find you?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I think it's probably something that BetBlocker have similarities with when it comes to what we do. I think initially it was about setting that precedence that we're a reputable app, right? So we are kind of available to view on the likes of Okra, and these are accreditation services to make sure individuals can recommend us. That was our kind of starting point. And then since then, we've basically taken the opportunity to build relationships across the board. So obviously, Pedro, we know you really well. And it's quite similar in that respect with some of the other organizations in the prevention, research, and treatment space. But we have a variety of different ways people come to us. I think word of mouth is super powerful, especially in this space. Individuals with lived experience
Mhm.
really have that ability to engage and to advise some of the others that they come across about RecoverMe. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is we have some strong relationships with like the health authorities, like you mentioned, the National Health Service. We've very much been in touch since we started our journey. And we've had the benefit of going to some of their sort of CPD days and doing talks and webinars to psychologists, especially down in the clinic in London. And that's been super helpful because I think if you have therapists that are recommending us in conjunction with what they're offering, it just adds that credibility to a patient or a client to utilize us. And then ultimately, gambling operators, they do a lot of kind of work in the SG space when it comes to signposting. And so we've had, I guess, the benefit of some of these operators actually highlighting what we do on some of these pages and at some of these events. We've had a university tour where we've gone to a number of different universities. Badil particularly was
Hmm.
really leading on that front. So yeah, I think it's ultimately down to exposure across the board. With this addiction, I think the stat is between, is it 5 to 8% seek help? I mean, I'm quoting 8% from America, and I think the UK is probably similar as well. Um, so wherever we're able to be seen, I think is helpful. And then you've got obviously organic traffic that comes through the likes of Google too.
I mean, for us, is mainly through operators, because it's a bit, you know, I don't know, like, is the place where gamblers are.
Yeah.
So if they, are struggling, and they're on the website, and they see our logo in the footer, it's a bit self-explanatory. They just click. And for us, it'd be like, um, you know it's easier, to get traffic through operators. Of course, we always get also traffic through other organizations like charities, and but mainly, through operators. For example, for us, it wouldn't be possible, to sort of, okay, not working with operators, because, okay, harm minimization needs to be where harm happens, but we would like to maybe deepen, our collaboration, with NHS and other organization. Any advice for us?
I mean, to be fair, I think you guys have a very good online presence, and ultimately, what I found especially is when we create the app, for example, part of what we've done is as part of our therapy, we really do advise individuals to download the likes of BetBlocker.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
because and I think, like you said, it's meeting people where they're at, right? Like you can't, in my mind, it becomes a lot more difficult for us to say, okay, start this treatment pathway if you haven't actually put some of the barriers in place in the first place. So bet blocker is super valuable for that, because automatically you're putting some distance between you and the problem to a
Mm.
degree. And then ultimately, from an advice point of view, I think, like I mentioned, you're doing all the right things. You have that really strong presence. You've got the likes of us recommending you, and I think if we all work together, and I'm not just saying that for the podcast.
No, no, I believe you. I mean, we have been, talking for years and
Yeah.
years, and I'm always, recommend you guys or in any events. Hey guys, come around. Set a mini stand if you don't have one. 'Cause, we have to help. We have to help each other. 'Cause otherwise we're doomed.
No, absolutely. And I think that's so important, right? Collaboration in this space is really beneficial for everyone. It's beneficial for us as organizations, but it's also beneficial for individuals, because you just get that full package. I can't do what you guys do, and you can't
Mm.
do to the same degree what we do. And I think working together cohesively really achieves that. So yeah, I mean, with the work that we do, you'll be part of that anyway. Because if you're using our app, you'll come across the likes of BetBlocker. And then yeah, I think it's just continuing to have these conversations, to work together, and to look out for one another, because you know what this space is like. Sometimes it's really difficult to break through. Sometimes,
I'm, I'm a bit curious and just changing a little bit of topic. What specialty you you know got into, in terms of being a doctor. I mean, how does it work? Do you do like 5-6 years to be a GP, and then you do, okay, I want to be a cardiologist, or you know
what's this?
uh, nephrologist, or whatever. What sort of specialties are you doing? And
How did we get there? No, it's
yeah.
a really valid question. I think for us in particular, because our journey started at medical school, it was always
Uh-huh.
something that we wanted to hold on to. We've always found that working in clinical environments has really helped guide the app to some
Mhm.
degree, because we can see how other, for example, mental health conditions may be managed and treated effectively, and sometimes transfer that over to what we're doing. And in that same vein, I think variety for me has always been really important. I've got a really strong interest in mental health. I
Mhm.
always have, and as part of a lot of the training that I did, I had that exposure. But I've always wanted to have some elements of physical health too, because I think as the world changes, there's so many things that kind of interlink and work together. So our training, so Adil and me are quite similar in that respect. We're
Mhm.
both qualified GPs,
Mhm.
and our journey started at medical school. So that's about 5 years. We intercalated, so we did another degree. So we made that a bit longer for ourselves. So 6 years it was. And then following on from that, you do your foundation year training. So that's two
Mhm.
years. And then to
Wow.
be a general practitioner, you do another three. So post university, it's about 5 years to qualify as a GP. And that's probably the shortest route. I think some individuals might end up taking a bit of time out, doing something else to explore their interests, potentially even locuming. To be fair, Dill, I think, did that for about 6 months as well. So the journey is so personal to each individual, but we've kind of both landed in that space. T just slightly different. He's pursued cardiology. So,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
but he's very much also quite similar to us. He does like that aspect of kind of mental health, and that's always been kind of an underlying interest of his. But I think something else that really called out to him was called cardiology. So we've got a little bit of variety on the team.
I think variety is really important, and I really think like mental health and physical health are related. Like, I think the Greeks, they were say mens sana in corpore sano, or maybe was the Romans or something. Like healthy mind
Yeah.
in a healthy body, and I suppose normally you can find, like people that they gamble in excess, their physical health, they suffer. Okay, if you're like in a chair, like in the office, and then you come home and are in the sofa, you're probably not very active. Maybe if you exercise a bit, you don't rely that much in the dopamine from the phone, so so it's all interlinked.
Absolutely. And I think that that's a big driver actually of staying in this space, because the more time goes, the more we learn about how these two things work in conjunction with one another. So I'd find it really difficult to give up kind of the NHS work that we do. And that's why RecoverMe has been a journey alongside that forever.
I suppose that this also, because I also do various things. I'm a clinician, as a therapy, but sometimes, it helps, So, I mean, if you're doing like your, you know, GP or, surgery work all the time, must be really tiring, So if you do like different things, I mean, like, okay, you do one work and then you recover from this job when you do the other one. And I suppose, because I don't know how are things, like in reality, but in the news you always hear that, okay, like the NHS, is really stressful, like, doctors are leaving, they're going somewhere else. Like, okay, like, if you're in the NHS, you don't have all the things that you need. But if you go to, I don't know, the US or Australia or New Zealand, they roll a red carpet for you. They pay you more, and you don't have to work see a million patients in 1 minute each. Like,
Whoa, that would be tough.
I don't know. So I mean,
Yeah.
like, you get this sort of, you're like, okay, this must be a big struggle, and if you don't have something else, maybe a bit of overwhelming. I don't know what's your experience. Is this sort of thing, okay, I need to see 100 patients in, I don't know, like my 10-hour shift or 12-hour shift? How is the reality?
So I think you're right. The NHS at the moment is in it's in a difficult position, right? But we love it so much because it's
Hmm.
free and like at point of use, and that's ultimately the the idea that we've taken with the app. We want it to be free at a point of use. So there are so many good things about the NHS, but I think over recent times, as you've probably seen in the media, the pressures that the NHS is under are quite significant and profound, and ultimately they will then be translated to those doctors on the ground. I do find my NHS days stressful. I can't lie; it can be very busy, and I think the type of individuals that we're seeing are just so much more complex than they were previously. We've got uh, a growing population, an elderly population at that. So complexity is something that we have to get better at managing. And unfortunately, sometimes those 10-minute slots to see your GP just don't feel like they're enough.
Hmm.
So it is hard. I think the advantage of being a GP, I would say, is the idea that you can kind of dictate your working week a little bit more flexibly than potentially individuals or doctors, sorry, that work in hospital environments. So my current way of practicing is 2 days a week with my
Okay.
NHS GP. I actually also work for another company called Helios as a GP lead, and that is a few of the other days of the week. And then I've got RecoverMe as well. So it's almost like a portfolio type role that I've managed to build up, and that keeps me quite fulfilled. I think it's a really nice balance for me, and
Hmm.
like you said, it just means that when I do go in for my NHS days, I do really enjoy them. And I think if I were to do potentially more, especially at this stage, yeah, I might struggle a little bit. So
I think it's a good thing, to have these flexibilities. Okay, I can, yeah, I don't know, like run half a marathon 2 days a week, but the rest I need to be like, um, yeah, and how do you see, the future in terms of, I don't know, because about, I think like a month ago, I mean, I live in Spain, and you know, healthcare, it seems to be okay here, uh, and I got like my results from the allergologist or whatever,
Okay.
and I just put them in Chat GPT. I was saying, oh, this is this and that, and my wife, she also had some analysis and just like some blood tests and put them. And oh my god, this is really, you put them and it says between range, and you may have a, and it's like, oh wow, well, the future is really, interesting, in terms of medicine. Okay, you're going to need people, but there's, like a big database. I suppose that if you are, I don't know, like doing blood tests, okay, you have, if you have like millions of, samples, or to compare, and it just does it in 1 second, and then you have like the human touch, to say, okay, this might be the, how do you see the future in terms of medicine, mental health, addiction?
Really interesting. I think it's so difficult to predict, if I'm honest. I mean, in the last 2-3 years, the advances that we've seen have been pretty profound with the likes of AI, especially the integration of that within medicine, specifically in certain fields. So you've got dermatology, radiology. These are like big fields that already are kind of adopting these technologies. Um, what I would say is mental health, addiction, slightly different space from what I've realized. You've got the ability to definitely utilize some of these services, but I do think sometimes it is with the complexities and the nuances of mental health, having that individual touch or having something that's less AI, still digital, less AI can be a little bit more beneficial. So it's a fine balance, I think, with utilization of these services. Because when it's normal and you're putting these results through the likes of ChatGPT, that's fine. I think you get that reassurance. You're like,
Mm.
okay, wow, like I don't need to worry, that's okay. But I can only imagine if you're putting some of these results through AI and your database is flagging, something quite worrying or quite distressing. Just having AI tell you that probably isn't enough. You need a clinician.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I mean, like, if you say, okay, you're whatever is fine, just make sure that you have balance that. But imagine that you have like something really bad, and it's like, oh, you're likely to, have this. You better check with. You may be like, oh my god,
Yeah,
something is wrong, or I don't know, like dust mites. Okay, I got allergy to dust mites. Just make sure that everything is clean. You use the, and like, yeah, that's great. But I suppose is what you mean. And I think particularly mental health is something that I think we still need the human touch. It's a bit like, you know, sometimes I ask people if they see their friends. When I'm, counseling, whatever. Oh yeah, we're in contact. You see them. Oh no, we chat on WhatsApp. Okay, but it's not the same, to send a
yeah,
text that seeing someone, giving them a hug, having
yeah,
a coffee. So I think there's a difference. We like the difference between the menu and the food. Or, okay.
yeah. And it's interesting because I mean we sit in the digital space as RecoverMe, right? So
Mm.
the benefits that I see with RecoverMe from a digital standpoint are that the stigma associated with the addiction makes it really difficult to seek help. And sometimes digital offers you that anonymity, that discreet um, option. And so that's a real positive. And then in addition to that, you've got the the growing problem. So we simply sometimes don't have the availability of in-person therapists and that sort of thing to be able to offer every single person that option. So scalability with digital is a big advantage. But like you said, that human touch is really important. And so as part of our program as well, we try to incorporate aspects where we encourage you to have those conversations, whether that's with your therapist, whether that's with your loved ones, your family, your friends, whoever that might be. So in that way, I would completely agree with you. I think having almost like like a dual approach. So you use digital, and then you've got
And yeah, I do agree with you. It's a bit like a first step, you know. Sometimes people is like, all right, you know, so I have a problem. I'm going to try this, and again, with the blocker, we don't claim to be a silver bullet. Okay, you know, this can help you, but ultimately, you need to sort out all the things in your life, you know. So it's something like, okay, you know, and you know, it's a bit of a part of the puzzle, not the puzzle itself. Yeah, so it's you know, it's important, you know, this sort of first step, you know, help people, you know, with the stigma. What do you think we can do, you know, for, you know, minimizing the stigma? Because again, you know, it feels a bit like, you know, and I still like feels like, you know, things they don't advance fast enough. You know, I was thinking, you know, 10, 15 years ago, okay, you know, now the stigma about gambling, but I'm sure that in a few years, you know, people will be like in the pub, oh yeah, you know, I'm gambling too much. Okay, make sure that good limits, or is anything going on in your life? Yeah, work is really stressful, or I'm going through, you know, problems. I don't know. I thought that, you know, people or society will advance with more, but still, you know, in many places a bit like it's seen a bit like something CD or a
typical.
character flaw. What do you think, you know, particularly from the medical profession, you know, to help people, fight the stigma? Because if somebody goes, you know, and you say, oh, you got, I don't know, like a problem with your skin, you know, it's not like stigmatizing. It's like, oh, you know, oh, that's oh, you have bad diet, you know, how dare you, you know, like eating junk food. Of course this is going to affect your okay, you know, you're compassionate and say, okay, you know, you make sure that you eat salads or something, maybe your skin condition will improve, or try to be less stressed. How, what can we do, you know?
Um, yeah, I think ultimately it probably is down to education and awareness. And like I mentioned earlier, as medical professionals, we came across a gambling addiction and the kind of devastating nature of a gambling addiction through, well, just by chance, if I'm honest, through some of the patient encounters that we've had. There has been a real push with regards to medical professionals just being that much more aware, because I think if you don't ask the questions, individuals feel like it's not something that should be talked about. So asking the question, I think, is really important. But in order to ask the question, we need to educate our workforce so they know to ask that question. So that awareness piece is obviously something that's growing. We have specific kind of modules now. We have talks. We have individuals who potentially have gone through really difficult times that are also vocalizing and feeling more confident to share their stories. And I think if people are able to see these individuals come forward, talk about what they've experienced, then they're more likely to also be able to do that, if that makes sense. So there's probably a lot more work that needs to be done. I agree. We're not advanced as much as we might have with other areas of life, but I think we're getting there. We're recognizing that it's like a behavioral addiction. Um, mental health as a professional, psychiatrist as a profession, also paying a lot more attention to it. So I think it will definitely come with time, but in that meantime, I think it's our job to a degree to really push out information, like you mentioned earlier. If there's data around this, really highlight to individuals, what that data is, and how much of an impact a gambling addiction can have on an individual, I think.
You know, I was thinking, what if a doctor suffered from problematic gambling? You know, is there extra stigma or something, because it's a really stressful job, you know, long hours, you know, you may have your day off, and you know, or I don't know, maybe like on a weekday, and okay, what do I do?
I think if a doctor suffered from anything, it's actually something that would have a profound effect. I've spoken to so many people in the profession, and I think ultimately, because we feel that we need to be in the best place possible to treat individuals, we can sometimes be quite neglectful of our own mental health,
Mm.
physical health, and that sort of thing. So I don't think it's just specific to a gambling addiction, if I'm honest. I think across the board, if we felt like actually we weren't performing to our best and that was due to either a mental health or physical health condition, we would probably struggle, to face that and to tackle it. There are some great organizations, there's support now in place, where you're able to access counseling, therapy, groups, and we have talks throughout training, and sometimes even once we're qualified, where individuals kind of come, they talk to us, or experts I should say, talk to us about what to do and how to do it, likes of practitioner health, that sort of thing. But if I'm being honest, and speaking on speaking personally as well, I think if I did feel like there was something that I was struggling with, potentially, it is difficult, because it's just the nature of what we do. I think
Yeah, yeah.
we're expected to be okay all the time, and we're human, so that's not always the case.
Because for example, I work in the gambling industry for years, and I had a lot of people in the gambling industry that were coming and say, I have a friend, and my friend is struggling with gambling and works in the gambling industry, and that's I mean, at the end they say, oh, it's me, the one that I have a problem, but there's nowhere that is specific for industry people to go and ask for help, and they feel a bit like, oh, if I go to Gamblers Anonymous or something, maybe they're not going to be sympathetic because they may feel that I'm harming other people or something. So I suppose maybe with a doctor, did you ever have a doctor coming to you and say, oh, me now, have a friend doctor that is struggling with gambling? Did you ever
So
have anyone?
not yet, but I have
Okay.
had patients who've come to me now,
Okay.
who have had actually.
They Google you.
Well, interestingly, I saw a patient who said that they had Googled me before the
Okay.
appointment, and they knew, they did know a little bit about my background, which I was like, oh, okay,
Mm.
taken aback a little bit. But yeah, I think now I've definitely seen it with patients. I've seen individuals who work in gambling and betting shops
Okay.
who have had problems with gambling. So my awareness is obviously a lot greater than it was 7 years ago. And I do take it on myself as well to try and educate those around me too. So as part of my training program, as part of places that I work at, I do kind of like to draw a bit of attention to what we do, not just at RecoverMe, but what's available. I think the UK does have a particularly strong treatment
Mhm.
provision comparatively to the rest of the world. And I think the NHS is obviously a big part of that. And I hope, in the coming years, it's the NHS alongside, like it has been with RecoverMe and other great organisations as well. So we can give individuals that choice. That's ultimately what I strive
I
for.
I heard about social prescribing and this sort of
Yeah,
thing. I
yeah.
don't know if that's like an article that you read from time to time, but do you think there'll be a time, or maybe it's now, where you get that doctor and say, okay, there's a gym membership, and you also got like a Recover Me,
Yeah.
rather than getting, okay, sertraline, for the depression. There's some anxiolytics too,
Yeah, social prescribers are great. Whilst I was at medical school, actually, I did do a short stint as one
Okay.
because I was interested. It was very short duration, but I think the social prescribers, the only disadvantage sometimes is, like, depending on what area you're working in, it might kind of differ as to what services that you have access to. So in that respect, I think again it's about building awareness and building that holistic picture. So as an organization, you are quite prominent and you're accessible, in the localities that you work. So social prescribing is great, and actually because of our networks in the medical space, we do have a few of our friends and colleagues who recommend RecoverMe too. So if it is something that they feel is a good option, then it's definitely something that we've had recommended to other individuals, similar to like what therapists do as well. So yeah, yeah, I definitely see a lot of value in social prescribers actually, and hopefully going forward, like you touched on, we have more of a variety of different things that we can suggest to individuals rather than the antidepressants or
Um,
medication.
yeah, because I suppose it's a bit of you know it requires effort from the client. It's a bit like if you have a person that comes to see you and you say, actually, you need to do exercise, you need to eat healthier, you need to do this. Say, okay, can you just give me the Ozempic or the Wegovy? You know.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing is, though, I feel like if they're coming to you, they have already taken that initial step. They've had
Okay.
that kind of recognition. They're at that stage where they've been contemplating. They want to take action. And I think it's our responsibility, or I feel like it's my responsibility to intervene at that stage. It's similar to like what you said about BetBlocker, I think. Like those individuals have come onto the SG page. They've kind of had a look at the signposting and they want to do something. And downloading BetBlocker or signing up to it, whatever, that's a first step. And it's so important that we are, as organizations, positioned in such a way that when these individuals really do want to seek help, there's something there. There's whatever that might be. It's just that first initial step to get them into that journey of recovery, because it's never linear, right? It feels like individuals potentially have episodes where they're able to be gamble free, and then for whatever reason life hits them and they might slip back into it. So at those various different points of their journey, we want to be an option.
Uh, Minal, I'm mindful of the time. I wanted to ask you: is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think, oh, this is really something that I wanted to talk about, but you didn't ask me or something? Is there anything that we have left? That. Oh,
No, Pedro, you're an excellent host.
oh,
You
thank
managed to
you.
cover things that I didn't even think about. So
Um,
um,
I hope I didn't put you in a difficult spot or anything.
not at all. No. It's really good to have these conversations, like I said. And yeah, no, I really enjoyed it actually. So unless there's something that you might also be wanting to ask me, feel free. Now's your chance.
Okay, now I think we covered most of the things. I wish you guys a lot of success. As you already doing very well, and for anyone that is struggling with gambling, RecoverMe is a really good tool that is out there for anyone that needs help. Thank you very much, Dr. Minal. And best of luck with everything ahead.
Thank you so much, Pedro. It's been great.
Okay, I'm